Hello everyone, this is the Indian cynophilist Dev Puranik, and today I want to talk to you about the PSA Decoy certification camp that's going to happen in Delhi in November. Uh, so let me sort of give you an overview of what trial decoy certification for PSA basically means. Okay, so trial decoying basically is those decoys that test out dogs in a trial, right? Uh, what needs to happen is any organization that's like PSA, for example, which is they PSA is a sport which requires uniformity, and they value safety in the way the dogs are work. Really, they value it a lot. So what needs to happen is decoys that are decoying in the trials for PSA need to be able to work all the dogs with a lot of intensity, with uniformity. What I mean by uniformity is, you cannot have a decoy, let's say, that's working 10 different dogs at a trial, work them with 10 different intensities, or basically the intensity decreasing as the number of dogs keep passing by, right? So there's that. Plus, even more so, safety is paramount. uh, what happens is the decoy is bringing a lot of heat and pressure and intensity at the dog's coming at the decoy with a lot of intensity. uh, the decoy needs to be able to catch the dog safely, uh, without causing injury to the dog or to himself, for that matter, and uh, and do this without sacrificing on the intensity that he's bringing to the fight, right? So they need to really select decoys that have the ability to do this, technical ability as well as the physical ability, uh, and that's basically why the certification camp is held. And uh, the people that pass out from that certification camp are PSA decoys, and what they get, then they, from there on, they become trial decoys, and they can decoy at any PSA trials, club level trials that happen all over the world. So uh, what we sort of want to do today is we want to sort of have like a just a discussion about the upcoming camp and what we can expect, and what potential decoys might be feeling about what to expect, etc., etc. And so we have a guest with us today. Well, he's not so much of a guest because he's basically the director of our podcast. So but he's been decoying with me for, I think, about 3 or 4 years now, and he will be going into the decoy camp and hopefully come out certified. So this is Aman. He is the director of our podcast, and he's been decoying with me for 3 or 4 years now, like I said, and he will be going into camp soon. And I really have high hopes for him. He's probably the best decoy that I have at my club right now, even though he's constantly sort of traveling for his work and comes back and decoys at club and stuff like that. He's very dedicated, and I just I just wanted him to be a part of this because I am a recently certified decoy. Like, I certified early this year, and hopefully by the end of the year he'll be a certified decoy as well. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun for both of us to have a discussion on this, right? So how are you feeling about, it's what, like, just about 22 days for the certification now? How are you feeling about it? How do you feel about your chances, and what's going through your mind?
So frankly, I'm a little nervous. I'm nervous about catching like heavy and fast dogs. In this case, like Ronin.
No, that's
properly.
my dog.
So because I've always had difficulty catching bigger dogs without trying to like meet them too fast, because I come from the from a train of thought with your teaching of how to reach decoying. So safety always comes first for me. So I'd rather catch a dog in a way where I'm able to dissipate the momentum and still fall and then recover easily, than to not be able to dissipate the momentum properly and then end up like, hurting the dog in the process. So that's
Right.
one of the biggest things I'm like worrying about right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I felt at CERT, right? Like what I was going through at that point, and we've talked about this at club also, right? Like I would rather show a lot of safety at camp. I mean, to be very honest, I don't necessarily know if like I'm not going to say that this is the best strategy or that is the best strategy. Like I don't know, to be very honest, but I'm saying that like it's always better to, like, or at least in my mind it felt like it would be better to show that I can be really, really safe, while I'm obviously still bringing a decent amount of intensity. Obviously it's not going to be like, like I'm not, almost like I'm not bringing any intensity just because I want to be really safe and all that. Obviously I'm still bringing intensity, but I don't know, maybe I can bring more, but at like, like the intention is not so much to show what I can do, but more so about how safe I can be, something like that, or how consistent I can be, I guess. And yeah, I think most of our decoys that are looking to go into camp, are going in with that mindset, right?
That is true.
So yeah. How do you okay, very, very important thing, like, because a lot of people don't know what goes into this, right? Like, so what have you been doing to prepare? Of course, like apart from your decoying, I mean, you've been decoying at club like very regularly, and you've been decoying our, hardest hitting, fastest dogs as well, and all that. But apart from decoying, what else have you been doing in terms of being able to sort of prepare yourself physically? Because we know it's like physically tremendously taxing, right? So what else have you been doing?
So besides just trying to be regular at the club and catch dogs and get the most amount of experience, I've taken help from Dr. Abhishek.
He was basically the guy that helped me out also. I'll have him on a podcast soon. Yeah.
Right. So Dr. Abhishek, having experience with athletes and now aspiring athletes, he runs me through these drills which help me become more stable in my footing and have more control over my core, and do drills which are specifically targeted towards lactic acid threshold. So we are doing drills which are helping me keep on consistently perform like besides the fact that lactic acid has been produced.
Right.
Like have one consistent performance throughout, irrespective of the amount of lactic acid produced in my system. So we've been specifically training for that because I personally physically don't have any issues generating power, but with my lack of experience from not working out in my life for the past couple of years and only decoying, I've not really trained those muscles in a way where I'm able to do them for endurance only.
Right. So it's not, what you're saying basically is it's not so much about being able to catch a dog, even if it's like a very hard hitting dog or whatever, but it's about being able to catch that kind of a dog over and over again, or maybe once they put you through a lot and then make you catch the dog, because we know that's what they'll do at camp, so
be able to catch a dog with the same intensity, with physical fatigue, and mentally be in a space where I am so used to the idea of staying in fatigue that it's not a shock to my body and I forget everything else because I'm so overwhelmed by the physical stimulation.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, because that's the only thing I can prepare outside the field. Like on the field, you can only work with the dogs, and outside the field, you can only prepare your mind and your physical body.
Yeah. Absolutely. So for people who don't know, I mean, a lot of people, of course, who are very sort of new to what even PSA is, or what PSA decoying is, and for sure what PSA trial decoying is, and what a certification looks like. But even for people, and I hope a lot of the people, we have a few number of people, I think, that are going into camp, right? And a lot of them have never really experienced what the PSA certification camp is going to look like now, right? So they don't really have an idea about what it is like. I think the decoys at my club have been lucky enough to have a little bit of an idea, because I've very recently been to one of the camps, and so I could at least sort of share my experience with them.
Right.
And we've tried our best to prepare everyone to what they can what we can expect at the camp, right? But I really hope that even the people who are going into camp end up watching this, because it'll have a lot. We'll sort of put it out there, and there'll be a lot of insights as to what we can expect at the camp, right?
Right.
So yeah, so one of the things that we talked about endurance, right? So what I saw at camp was there was a lot of drills,
Right.
and to the point where they almost sort of want to judge you catching dogs once you're really, really sort of spent,
Right.
right? They don't like it's they'll probably have you catch dogs a little bit before that as well, like just about like short distance catches. Um it almost felt to me like they just did that just to see if no one's at camp that's like really bad at catching dogs.
Yeah, so
You
bad
know,
at catching that they will not put them through anything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So exactly. So like they did like a very short kind of like a couple of catches at a very short distance. Like the dog's not going to speed up so much that you'll like even if you screw up, you're not really going to injure the dog or anything like that. That's sort of what they did. But it almost felt to me like that was not like we were not being judged on that. We were judged maybe in terms of being able to continue or move on from there.
Yeah.
Because like if you screw that up, like they probably won't like let you do like a courage test or something like that at the end of camp, because that'd be worrying, right? But that was not something that, or at least it did not seem like something that you'll like get certified on the basis of.
Right.
Whatever catching and driving and all that, and all the techniques of decoying, all of that that we were tested on happened really after we were spent.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what we are preparing for. So
So I have this one question, because you've already gone through the camp recently, and they can only mix it up so much that it will change so much. So
yeah, I guess, yeah.
So what was the layout that was taken? What was the actual layout that you were taken through, that we could like probably like wrap our minds around, and we can mentally make an image of how it feels like to go through it.
So yeah, so like I said, it's okay. So let me start from what I feel was the intention of the whole thing, right? Like, okay, so the idea is, let's say you have a 2-day trial, right? And you're going to decoy a 2-day trial, and let's say you have I don't know, maybe 15 dogs in the PSA 1, right? I'm just like, maybe I know that's a lot, especially for India, but I mean, they can't like certify you just for India, right? But assume there's like 15 dogs in the PSA 1. So, and let's say you're doing the courage test, right? So you're running in at the dog really, really hard, catching the dog, driving the dog, and you're doing that, let's say 15 times, right? Maybe on Saturday, right? Now that we have to do the PSA 1 twice, maybe you have again maybe 12 of those people. Maybe some of them failed, they're doing it again, or maybe all of them passed or whatever, but they're doing their second leg. Maybe there are 12 of those, that are again doing ones tomorrow. So you're doing 12 courage tests the next day as well, right? And this is not counting, maybe you'll do some maybe handler attacks in the PDC, maybe you'll do some maybe something for the PSA 2s, something like that, right? And in the 2s, you're even just running around and during the obedience as well, which is in itself quite a lot, right? So it's 2 days of like a lot of decoying, right? Like that might happen to you, right? So the idea, basically, what I understand from it is to be able to test you, like to begin with, to see if okay, the intensity at which you begin on, let's say, Saturday morning, do you finish with the same intensity on Sunday evening, right? So that's obviously the number one thing that they want to see. But it's not just like, what a lot of people can maybe do is bring in intensity, like which comes in on Saturday morning, it comes in a lot more naturally, and it's a lot more manufactured on Sunday evening, right? Like you sort of force yourself to bring that intensity, right? Which is fine, like as long as you bring it. But when you tend to force yourself to bring it, sometimes your technique goes away,
Right.
or at least it's not as good as it was, when it sort of came with a flow naturally to you, right? So the idea that I got from whatever they were testing out is that they want to see that once your body is really done, your technique does go for a toss, but how much? Okay, like how much of it can you retain even when like you're really really spent? So that's what it looked like, what the idea was about, right? So to begin with, I want to tell everyone we were almost about in the suit. uh, for people who've never put on a bite suit, it's fairly heavy. It restricts your movement quite a lot depending on what kind of a suit you're putting on, and you tend to sweat a lot in it, right? So you're like, there's a real good chance for dehydration if you're not hydrating regularly and if you're not managing that well. So, but we were in the suit for almost about 5.5 hours on Saturday, 5.5 hours on Sunday, somewhere like that. We had like in between, uh, we had about like half an hour, 45 minutes kind of a lunch break. But apart from that, more or less the entire time, maybe apart from the first maybe 20-25 minutes when you were having drills and stuff like that, we were in the suit, right? Apart from all that, so that itself is something. Uh, but yeah, like you'll have like warm up drills. There'll be cones set up. You'll basically jog to the other cone, jog back. You'll jog halfway, do like shadow practice of a catch on the upper body, then drive to the other cone, back. Then you'll do catches on the leg, drive to the other cone, back. Uh, then you sort of, once all of this is done, then you'll start doing the same thing with suits on. Then you'll start doing them with suits on and a tire put like tied up to your first in the beginning to on your arm, which sort of it's an exercise that we regularly do, right? Like the so what like I'd like to explain this. Basically, there's you put a leash on a tire, you tie it up on your arm, and you run forward or you walk forward, like you would walk at a dog. And as soon as the line tightens, that's like a dog hitting you in the arm. And that's when you swivel around like you do in a catch, and then you start driving and pulling the tire through. Basically, you do the same thing with the leg as well. Uh, you know, this is basically more or less like your warm up exercises.
Right.
You'll do this both days typically. I think this won't change much, but I've seen this happen like in most of the camps that at least I've seen online, and stuff like that. uh, there were other drills in which we did like we did in like pairs basically, where we had a log. Both of us were like lying down and had a log on our torsos basically, and we had to do sit-ups. And you don't have to let the like you can't let the dog fall on the log sorry the log fall on the ground, and you finish your sit-ups, you get up, then you start doing, what is that, overhead presses. Yeah, then you do overhead presses, and after that you run to the end of the field with the log on your shoulders, both of you in unison basically. Come back. uh, so there's that exercise. There were sandbag throws. uh, there was that. There were, what else, overhead presses with like a beer keg, stuff like that. A little bit of battle ropes. So you keep doing a lot of this for hours and hours together. And that's once you're like they sort of make sure you're really really going to be tired. and that's when they'll sort of start asking you to catch dogs, and they basically want to see how much of your technique can you keep after you've gone through all this.
Right. All right. So the next question that I would like to ask you is, what are the specific qualities that the judges are looking for in the ideal trial decoy?
Right. So, okay, so I don't know what I can call like an ideal trial decoy, because it's going to be a little weird, like in my sort of interpretation of what this is, right? Because like you can have, let's say you can, and we've seen this, right? There are decoys out there that can like bring a lot of intensity for a couple of catches, uh, but they may not be necessarily safe catching 15 dogs, and there'll be decoys will be safe catching 15 dogs, but may not be may not be able to bring the same amount of power that someone else brings, so that's a little debatable. Obviously, maybe like if you're talking about the ideal sort of decoy, I guess when both of them meet, that's probably the ideal decoy, who can bring in the power and who can also keep bringing in the power, right? So I think that's basically your ideal decoy. But like for me, a lot of it is also like like what I'm seeing now is obviously like with better preparation and stuff like that, you're probably not going to run as many dogs as like somewhere we were sort of imagining that I'll run dogs. You maybe run that one odd dog who maybe shouldn't have been put in that trial to begin with. But I don't think we're going to run as many dogs as we thought. But we're going to be able to take points from dogs, right? So I think that one aspect of decoying that we tend like because when it comes to camp and when it comes to trial decoying, we are so much about athleticism, endurance, catching and driving, and bringing in the speed and stuff like that, and which is obviously I'm not saying it's not important, uh, but I think like from the perspective of being an ideal trial decoy, like we tend to forget about presence of mind, like just being able to read the dog, where can I take a couple of points from this team, stuff like that. And that's something that's always amazed me, and I've seen like the most experienced decoys in PSA do that. Like I want to be able to, I'm not saying I'm able to do that yet. I mean, I'll try, obviously. I've not, so also like this is going to be my first trial decoying, right? So I'll try to do that, obviously, but I mean, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I've seen so many of like, the senior, like, the most experienced decoys in PSA do that. Let's say, when we watch nationals and, stuff like that. That's really something that's amazing to me. Okay, so and then coming back to what judges basically put importance on, or like the instructors of at the camp, what they put importance on while certifying you or not certifying you. I would still assume safety is the number, like, because the only reason that I say, okay, so let me tell you this though, that we were all given our critiques individually. Like we were not given the critiques in a group, right? So I don't know what someone else was told, and other people don't know what I was told. I mean, we can obviously go out and discuss what we were like, what we were told, right? So whatever I do know is based just on that. Like I've not seen someone else being critiqued at the camp, right? And no one else has seen me being critiqued, right? So but just based on what I saw at camp and the people who certified. So the camp that I was at, we had 23 people, like 23 potential decoys. Excuse me. 13 of them certified, right? So 10 did not. So based on what I saw and the sort of educated guess that I can arrive at is, I think safety is going to be of like paramount importance. Okay, like you can have like really fast, uh, like like really intense decoys that fight dogs with a lot of power and stuff like that. But if they're not as consistent and they don't look like they'll keep being safe on every single catch, some of them did not certify, even though I saw that, I mean, for most of the catches they did manage to bring it, you know. Uh, but to me, it sort of felt like, maybe they looked a little bit like, I don't want to say reckless, because all the 23 people who were at camp were outstanding. They seemed like really good decoys, and obviously they knew what they were doing and all that, and maybe little things here and there, and maybe the rub of the green not going their way on that day. But maybe some people who looked a little bit more adventurous, or uh, again, I mean, I can't really find the right word, but maybe gave the impression, for whatever reason, that they still have to be a little bit more safe, uh, ended up not certifying. So there's that. um, so I think safety is the first criteria. At the same time, you can't be safe while sacrificing on intensity a bit too much, right? Like, you still want to be testing dogs, so but I can't really say a lot on that, because I don't think anyone that came to camp was like really soft in the way that they were decoying. Like,
Right.
everyone went at the dogs pretty hard. I mean, some went much more harder because they were physically much more, I guess, even gifted, or even maybe much more prepared. Like, I know there was a decoy at camp who certified, and he obviously should have, and in my mind he was the best decoy at that camp. And wow, he was like really fast, really intense, just. And when I say he looked gifted, it almost takes away all the hard work he must have put in to reach that place. So I don't, like, but I don't mean that when I say gifted, but he really looked like he was something else.
Right.
So yeah, I was really in awe of the way that he was decoying, and I was not being that, and I couldn't be, right? Like, but what I felt like I could bring is a lot of technique, a lot of consistency, because I don't have the brawn that some people obviously have, right? So yeah, but uh, the senior decoys at camp and the instructors, all of them were very sort of like, they were pushing the idea of sticking to technique a lot. They were like, one of the major things that I was being told was to stay as low as possible. Like, that's sort of very funny thing, right? Like, we were talking about this. We always had this feeling about, how bigger people have it easier,
Yeah.
and maybe in a lot of ways they do, because maybe they don't have to expend as much power as we
Yeah.
need to.
Yep.
uh, but the other issue that they have, and we've talked about this, that they have a higher center of gravity, right? And uh, if it's a bigger person, and maybe if they get their footing wrong, uh, it's going to be much more easier for a dog to topple them over than maybe a
Right.
smaller, shorter person, right?
Yeah.
So they were teaching us, they were instructing us to stay as low and as stuck to the ground as possible. That was the biggest sort of uh, instruction that, I mean, at least me personally, I was getting. uh, yeah, like, most people who were like really consistent in their work, very safe, brought in like a decent amount of intensity, I think certified. But they were really, really, really uh, demanding about the technique of catching, and they were really demanding about you being able to hold the line,
Right.
you know.
Not sidestepping while catching the dog.
Yeah. So hold. That's what holding the line basically means, right?
Right.
So yeah, in like people who are not familiar with PSA yet, so when the dog's running at you, you are running at the dog. You're basically you want to try and meet the dog with as little sort of slowing down as possible. Of course, you maybe slow down a little bit just to make it safe, but you almost wanted to seem like you have basically just smashed into each other. There is usually a reaction from most people where they sort of want to go off the line, because the dog's coming at you. Either you're worried for yourself, or in most cases you're worried for the dog. You don't want to hurt the dog, obviously. I mean, you have to understand, a decoy's name is tremendously sort of how do you influenced sort of by can he return the dog in the same shape as it was sent to him, so it's like if you can give me back my dog like in the same shape that was sent to you, like, yeah, I'll trust you as a decoy. So decoys are tremendously worried about that. And sometimes when you have dogs that like run into you almost like they're going to hit you in the chest and not in the arm,
right,
people tend to feel like they want to sidestep. And
especially when you see a dog coming straight from the center.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes you have those really bad ones, right? Like that
who come
that,
outwards,
yeah,
and then
that they might curve here. And to me, I think this is even like, this is like okay, I guess. But when you have one that sort of
comes
inwards and then sort of goes into your arm, and till the moment that he does go into your bicep, it almost feels like he's maybe going to bite you in the torso, or maybe I don't know, somewhere else.
Going to like knock you on your stomach.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe like in the beginning, I guess for most decoys, it almost feels like he'll bite me in the torso somewhere, something like that. Eventually, you're not so much worried about you being bitten there, because most times that the dog doesn't get a good grip.
Right.
Like it's usually frontal, and it's not so much going to hurt you, but it can hurt the dog a lot more if that does happen. Like, and you don't want to fall on top of the dog, but if the dog hits you here and you're running at the dog, and it's going to create like a very messy situation.
They're gonna put a lot of force on their pastons and their joints.
Yeah, exactly. So like you want to be as safe as possible, but you still want to be able to trust that that the dog. And this is interestingly. So what the situation with Nuke right now is, right? So Nuke is my other dog. Ronan is my was my like primary competition dog, but I'm sort of really playing around with the idea of trialing with Nuke also this year. I've not made up my mind yet, obviously, but so what's happened with him is I taught him to target primarily on the upper body, okay. And then after a little while of working him on the upper body, for whatever reason, I don't want to get into those reasons right now, but for whatever reason, I thought that it'd be better if he starts targeting the leg, right? And so we changed that target, right? And now we have a dog that more or less, yes, does target the leg, as long as you sort of show him, like you show him a little bit of like you sort of draw him to the leg even a little bit, and as long as the arm's not presented, he'll go into the leg even without you sort of drawing him in. But that's the thing with PSA. For the consistent picture that a decoy needs to show, excuse me, he's going to run in, like all decoys will be running in with the arm presented, irrespective of whether it's an upper body dog or a lower body dog, right? So I was asking Josh, who's basically going to be our senior decoy at
Both are trials.
At both our trials, and he will also be the instructor at the certification camp.
Yeah.
Right. So I was talking to him about what I can do about this, and and he was like, yeah, I mean, keep training him to bite the leg.
Yeah.
But fine, if it comes to that, let him bite
Wherever he
and
wants, yeah.
we'll, as decoys, we have to manage,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I mean, he was like, he's Josh, like, he was kind enough to,
Yeah.
be like that, like,
Nuke is definitely gonna be a big problem for leg dogs.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's the biggest leg dog out there right now.
yeah, I guess, like,
Yeah, Nuke is the biggest leg dog.
yeah, I mean,
For
at
India.
least he's not like, he's not like extreme fast or something like that. So that, I guess,
Yeah.
that sort of makes it easy. Like, at least that safety part of it is not going to be that much of a concern, I guess. So which makes it better. Like, what I'm sort of worried about from like a competitor's point of view is, he's going to be drawn towards both the targets and not like ending up biting anyone clearly. And that's what I have in my mind. But yeah, basically what I was talking about is, decoys at times will have to contend with this situation that they still have to bring in the heat, and you're a little bit worried about where the dog's going to target,
right,
or how he's even going to approach that target, right? Like when we talked about a dog that comes in this way, or something like Nuke, where he should be biting the leg, and most times he will, but there is that very slight off chance that
that he might just bite the bicep.
He might just bite the bicep. It's a possibility that we can't deny. So
so you're going to trial as a decoy for the first time?
Yeah.
So how are you feeling about that?
I mean, I'm okay. To be honest, I've been so much consumed by preparing my dogs for the trial that I've sort of had the luxury of not thinking too much about decoying at the trials. One thing that I'm really good about is that I'll be decoying with Josh. So again, those who don't know, so what I like in April, I went to the US and I certified at a camp in the US. And what I did was I went and stayed with Josh for a while, and I decoyed at his club, and he mentored me, and it was just really amazing to be learning all of these things about trial work and in decoy work in general, to be very honest, not just trial decoying obviously, but a large part of it was trial decoying, because that's what I was there for. And so he's really been like a big brother to me, from that whole just like he's the biggest reason that I was able to certify, to be very honest. And I'm really lucky that the first time I decoy at a trials, like he'll be my senior decoy. So I can ask a lot of questions. I can if I feel nervous, I know I can sort of go to him and like talk to him about it. I know, like in the middle of a trial, there's usually not so much time, but I mean, still, I'll try my best in whatever I'm.
Because this was I asked this question because you used to play a team sport, and then you stopped playing that team sport. Now you're again getting to be a part of a team sport as a decoy. And the decoy team is the same team who's competing against the other team, which is the trialing team.
Yeah.
So you will be with your fellow decoys conspiring against the people who are competing.
Yeah, to be very honest, it's a lot of fun in a way. Like, and see, to be honest, like I am like every time I think so, at least right now. Every time I step onto the field as a trial decoy, I'll be extremely concerned about safety of all the dogs that I decoy. That's always, and I know that this is something that a decoy is supposed to say, but that's not so much why I say it. I say it because I see mistakes being made. and I understand that there are humans that are making these mistakes, and I'm human and I will make mistakes, and I want to make as less of them as possible. Over the years, I don't want them to pile up and
become a statement for
yeah,
you.
exactly. So that's basically like something that plays on my mind a lot. But I really try voluntarily to think about all the fun things. Like and like of course, like there's not a lot of, like, obviously I haven't decoyed at the trials a lot, but I really look forward to be very honest, like the higher levels, like I really look forward to decoying in the tours and stuff like that. And maybe if we had a lot more decoys in India, maybe it would have.
You're about to. You're about
Yeah,
to have a lot more
No, I'm
decoys.
saying like no. Like I'm saying like in terms of if we had a lot more decoys before me, and if like we had a lot more senior like decoys who are more senior than me, then maybe I wouldn't get to decoys in the tours like for some time. I guess I'm assuming, right? But since that's not the case, I think I'm going to get to decoy in the tours.
So far, we
here
right
in
now
Pune,
have like
right?
3 certified decoys in India.
Exactly, right?
So yeah.
So so I'll get to decoy in the tours pretty early on as well. And I think for me, like you just like not just even the part where the actual biting and all that is happening. I mean, obviously that's amazing. That's a lot of fun. But even how we were practicing at club, and so Sunita ma'am, who I normally coach, right? And I told her this before that right now, like we had like a mock trial kind of a thing, and I told her this, that don't think of me as your coach right now, and I
think of me
really
as your adversary.
yeah, exactly, like I really need you to think like I'm trying to get you to fail, and I'm going to do things to try and like mess with your mind and stuff like that. And just the fact that I was able to, and I don't know how much of it I'll be able to do at trial, and obviously I'll talk about this with Josh, like what I I really want to fine tune what I can and cannot do, and stuff like that. What would be sort of taken as banter, and what would be sort of walking the line a little bit. So but I really enjoy that, and I think I'll also enjoy it as a competitor, if and when I'm in the tours some point, hopefully. But yeah, I like even that part of it, and that's I think something that I really really like about PSA. Like it's the decoys are really out there to try and mess with you in in whatever way possible. And and the weirdest part is that so in the Pune trials we have about what, like 16 17
PDCs.
Like something like that. We have like 16 or 17 PDCs,
And we have how many PSA2s? Two? Three?
two PSA 2 dogs, I think, and one PSA 1, and some of the PDCs will then eventually go on to the PSA 1.
PSA 1s, yeah.
So it's a decent amount of dogs, but the thing is, a lot of those dogs are from my own club.
Yeah.
So
10 dogs? Or
11,
12?
11, I think.
11.
Yeah,
like 80% dogs, 70% dogs are from Working Dog Club of Pune.
So it's going to be a lot of fun to sort of be on the other side of it, where I've sort of helped them train for the better part of the last maybe couple of years or so. To be able to get their title. And now I have to sort of stand in between them and the title, or at least I have to try.
By next year, we will have all our club members become active, competitive members of PSA.
Yeah.
By next year.
That in itself is awesome. So with that, I wanted to talk to you about why the decoy camp, and why the potential decoys who go into the camp and hopefully certify is very very important for the landscape of the the Indian working dog scene, basically.
Yeah.
Because the way it works right now is like
Yeah.
we need obviously one senior decoy, and I guess it's still a little bit far off till we have our first senior decoy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Self-sufficient trials.
yeah, but that's basically the goal, right? Like we
Yeah.
should be able to have our own trials, and of course for that we'll need judges as well.
Yeah.
But excuse me, if we have decoys of our own,
Mm.
I think things become a lot more easy, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, right now, what ends up happening is we have maybe one, or this year is basically going to be the first time we have 2 trials
Mm.
happening in the year, but they're also happening like back to back, right?
Back
Like
to back,
weekend to
yeah.
weekend. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's really not like if someone, God forbid, fails in one of the trials and they realize that they need to work on something,
They won't have enough time
exactly,
to work on it.
it's
Yeah.
not like they're going to have enough time. Like
Yeah.
if they fail because of maybe like a silly handling mistake or something like
Yeah.
that, or just something that went off on that day,
Mm.
then I mean, awesome, they have another chance, in a week's time, which is nice. But if it's something that they realize they really need to go back and train, there's not going to be enough time. So
Yeah.
what I've realized is we need, I mean, it's nice that we have 2 trials back to back, but we also need like trials happening through the year, like maybe 6 months away from each other, 3
Yeah.
months
A
away
trial
from
every quarter.
Yeah, something like that. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So if we are to have that, like, if we have more decoys within the country, at some point, if we have a senior decoy or more senior decoys within the country, at some point, hopefully a
Yeah.
judge within the country, I think,
Yeah.
things will become far more easier. And
Yeah.
even in terms of the finances of it all, like all the people who are competing right now and, in decoying and traveling in order to do so are spending a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
So once like this starts happening, I think it'll become a lot more
Easier.
cheaper, and so yeah, that's sort of what I'm looking at, and that's sort of what we intended to do as a club also, right? Like we wanted, I mean, of course, like for PSA India to become self-sufficient as well, but we also as a club, we wanted to be self-sufficient in the, like, that we have enough decoys of our own.
Yeah.
We have enough competitors of our own, which we do right now. Like I don't think we'll be able to add like a lot more competitors in the near future.
Yeah.
Like unless, God forbid, someone from the current competitors drops out or something like that. But beyond that, because it's already getting to a point where we're working so many dogs every club day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy almost, right? So I don't like we already have a lot of competitors, like and like you said, by next year all of them will be trialing.
All of them will be trialing. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have more decoys. I think we are also right now the club with most number of decoys, like training decoys.
Club decoys.
Yeah.
Most number of club decoys available.
But like hopefully by after the camp we'll have a few more decoys, hopefully.
Most number of certified decoys.
Yeah. So once if by God's grace we have that, trialing from there on will be a lot more.
Yeah, because the dogs will be familiar to the decoys, and it's just easier it's a conducive environment for the club to have advantages. Like every club needs to have an advantage.
Yeah, like see, to be very honest, I'm not like what, like to me, like I see it a little differently than dogs being used to me, for example.
Yeah.
Like I would see it like I know every dog's weakness.
Yeah.
Right. Like if it's 10 dogs from my club, I know what your dog can't handle.
Yeah.
I know what his dog, like, someone who's new to that dog who's maybe doing a handler attack has very little time.
Yeah.
To know what this dog is okay with, what like where is the weakness, like all that, right? But I already know that, so if you have a decoy that's willing to press on that, which I am,
then you need to go train more.
Yeah, exactly. So the one thing though that I feel is nice is like at club I can tell you that I'd be looking to do this to your dog.
Yeah.
Because I know that this is a problem for you. So
Yeah.
you can obviously work on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there is any weakness, your club decoys will know about it. And usually, like what I've seen in PSA, usually with like what I've seen with, let's say, Sean Siggins and Jerry for the longest time. What I've seen with what I've showed you is with Josh and Koi, is that your club decoys tend to go much harder at your dogs than maybe they'll go, because like no decoy sort of wants that people around them to have that feeling that
he went soft on his own club
yeah
dog.
exactly.
Yeah.
So no decoy really wants that.
Yeah.
So they tend to go even harder, I guess, at at their own club dogs. So I see that from that viewpoint. But the advantage to me a lot more is you're involved in the planning. Like like when we say that we want to have a trial year end, for example, as a club, all the club decoys are there when you plan this out, so they keep themselves available.
Yeah.
They're not traveling, so you're not paying for their travel. They're right there.
Yeah.
So you're just maybe paying for the travel of the senior decoy and the stay, and so I'm saying financially it's a lot more easier.
Yeah.
Logistically, obviously, it's a lot more easier. Like you have a few people in the club who are always running around to make things happen, and most times they're going to be trialing their own dogs as well.
Yeah.
So which makes it that much more difficult for them. So like if you have most things in house,
with the most amount of, like, if the club grows and the decoy, number of decoys grows, like this will at least ensure us that we can ourselves have our own 2 trials every year.
Exactly.
So we don't have to like wait every year for that 1 week, and we can just be like, it's just coming in the next 6 months.
And that, like like what I've started noticing more and more is the way trials are going to work in India is, like, at least here in like the western part of India, is it looks like we are always going to have an extended monsoon from here on.
Yeah.
So for all the international viewers, monsoon basically is we have a rainy season. Okay, like it's not like what we have in India. Basically, is we have technically we should have about 3 or 4 months of rains. But what's happening now is it's sort of pushing with the climate change or whatever, I don't know, but it's sort of extending to maybe about 5 months or so, at least in this part of the country.
Yeah.
And it's not very easy to train. We manage, but it's not very easy to train. But it's definitely not easy to trial, because the fields are all mushy, and it's it's just like it's going to be very prone to injury if you sort of try and trial on during that time. So we have a fairly small window. Like we have from maybe November, because we have October is usually
November
a little
to
warm.
April types.
Maybe March,
Like that's the window we will have like trials.
But April again will be like crazy warm.
Yeah, it will be warm, but it will be no.
It'll be hot, right?
Yeah.
Like so. Like to me, I see from like November to maybe like Feb in this part of the country. Like you can have March, April, maybe down south, like Bangalore.
Not in northern areas of.
Not in the north,
They are also
not here. So it's like we have, and what's happened is the best sort of time of the year that we have for trials. Like that's like in America, it's the main holiday season.
Yeah.
So. A lot of judges aren't going to be available, obviously. Decoys aren't going to be available. So we have to sort of manage around that.
Yeah.
I'm sort of assuming that maybe in the north, monsoon arrives a little late. So maybe they can have trials around June or something like that. I don't know, but...
but June is like hot and humid.
Oh, okay. So,
like 40 degrees Celsius, 45 degrees Celsius.
So then
that's when the summer vacations are happening.
Okay. So then that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
So south is going to be like probably the mid of year.
And yeah, I guess like Bangalore can have trials around March, April. That's what I've been told. And then maybe we have to sort of then figure out stuff like night trials or something like that. But what I'm saying essentially is if we have most of the resources that we need in order to have trials, resources in terms of like decoys and senior decoys and judges and stuff like that, that will make things a lot more easier, right?
Easier for us.
So
Then we can have trials every month.
Yeah, at some point, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because like that's what I keep thinking about, right? Like we know about all these, like the senior most people in PSA who have maybe 2 PSA 3 dogs, 3 PSA 3 dogs, and we always we talk to Jonathan about this, and the amount of time he spent on the trial field in order to have, let's say, just one PSA 3 dog, for example, right?
Average of 8 trials.
Exactly. So like what I'm thinking
India hasn't
is
seen 8 trials ever.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking, right? We need, like, if someone here has to achieve a PSA 3, at some point we need a way to increase the number of trials that they get to attempt in a year. It's not going to happen without that. So it's we really need to work on that. So I think the decoy camp that's happening right now will really contribute towards it a lot.
And plus, with the decoy camp happening now, I think this is the 3rd decoy camp that is happening in India.
It was one in 2016, one in 17, 18, 4th one, I think. 4th one, yes.
Fourth one. Like Delhi, Hyderabad,
but
Pune,
the first
Pune.
the first two, I don't know how the 3rd one was, because I was not present at the 3rd one. But I've seen the first two. I was I was a part of the 2nd one, but that got called off midway because we didn't have strong enough dogs back then. Like we had, so technically before that we had just had one camp. But I think like you expect a lot more from this camp. Like I think they sort of remodeled how they go about it.
They're going to have a standard approach to every camp, which will be
like that's what I'm assuming. But like so how it works technically is Sean Siggins is is the person who's usually instructing these camps, and I think now like they've given Josh the responsibility to to instruct at the camp, or maybe it's going to be Josh and Jonathan both, something like that. I'm not very sure, but it's going to be like that, and that's what I was talking to Josh. Will it be like how it was with Sean? And Josh being Josh, he just said it's not going to be easy. That much I'll tell you. So I'm assuming it'll be just as difficult, So, and I think, like I see, to be very honest, like how Siggins can be like. I mean, of course, he's pushing you physically, but like for people who know him, who've met him, he can be very like psychologically, like in your head, when he can if you fall, like he can he can just, maybe if he yells at you or something like that, you're really going to like, for some reason, or maybe because of the relationship that we share with Josh, I think it's very difficult for me to imagine him in that role where he's like, of course, like he can definitely physically push you, and I'm sure like there's a side of him that can psychologically push you as well. He definitely does that to dogs as well, right? I'm sure he can do that as well. I'm just saying that because I've not seen that side of him where he's being like sort of like mean to you, even if it's just to sort of test you in that situation. It almost feels to me like Josh doesn't have a mean bone in his body.
We have to ask that from his club members.
Yeah. So I'm sure he can, like or maybe he's practicing it or something, I don't know. But yeah, like because of the way that we've seen him most of the times, it's hard for me to see him being like in your head, being mean, I mean, even in that sense, like Siggins being mean to you because he's testing you, obviously. It's not like he's like really being mean to you, but yeah, I mean that's like a big part. And I feel like if it's Josh, especially because of the relationship that some of our club members share with him already, like in terms of, and I'm not saying in terms of, I know he's not going to be easy on anyone because he has a relationship with anyone. I'm saying in terms of, the kind of mentor that he's already been to, some of us who were already a part of the club in 2019. I think people feel a lot more approachable, I guess, because it's not a new person,
Yeah.
something like that.
And a lot of other people also besides our club are also already like friends with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course they've also heard a lot about him from us, and the kind of person that we feel he is, and so yeah, I mean, we really should take advantage of the fact that I think we'll be a little bit more calmer, that he's instructing, and I think we can approach him, and we can, like, really, not that we can't approach, like, even if it was Siggins or something like that, it's not that, but I guess more so about, it's not a new person, more or less.
It's late in the whole prepping season for the decoy certification. Are there any specific 5 points or 10 points that you could like list out for any decoy who's preparing or aspires to prepare for it and is in the process of it? Can you like name those 5 tips or 10 tips to those people?
Right. Okay. So I think one major thing that I felt, that you should feel at home in a suit. A lot of it is just that, like you should own that, right? Like you shouldn't like, like, experienced decoys really feel not much different when they have a suit on.
Right.
They move more or less very naturally when they're in a suit, right? Because that, I think, in like, especially in the camp setting, will take you really far.
Yeah.
So I think just be really used to being in a suit. So that's one part. Practice tremendously with I would say, with, like, it should go without saying, but I don't know, for some reason it still does happen. Like, practice with your suit pants on, like, and like, not just in terms of practice. Like, one thing that I start, like, initially we used to not do as well, but like, even when you're decoying at club, right? Now what we do at club also is, like, we have dogs that we know for sure are going to be very clean on the upper body.
Yeah.
Like, it's usually not a problem. And you remember those times when we used to maybe put on a scratch pant, because it's just, it's not as tiring, obviously. And then just put on the suit jacket and something like that. And for the last, like, I don't know, maybe 2 years, something like that, we've just, or maybe
Stop
just a
doing
year,
that.
maybe.
Yeah.
We've stopped doing that. Like, it might be a dog we know is going to go cleanly into the bicep and all that, but we have our suit pants on, because I think it makes a lot of difference. And I just keep seeing decoy without the suit pants on, and we see decoys like catch dogs really smoothly, amazingly, drive them really nice, without the suit pants.
Yeah.
But trust me, once the suit, like, if you're not used to it, like, if you're used to it, like, you probably will feel like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you're not used to it, the suit pants being, you being in suit pants now is going to make a lot of difference. If not for that one catch, definitely when you have to, like, do it over and over, or you have to do it after a lot of drills that you've done, because you're going to be very tired.
Yeah.
Plus, in the off chance that you do fall, and there's a very good chance that you will fall in certification, because you're going to be really tired. So if you don't fall in a catch, maybe at times it's still possible that you'll fall maybe in a drive, just because, not so much because the dog took you down, but because you were just that tired. And sort of, like, you had those jelly legs or whatever, like, you don't, like, you can't feel your feet really, and you go down because of that. So there's still a possibility that you might fall. And if you're not used to, like, just popping up quickly while wearing suit pants and while having the dog on your arm, or maybe, God forbid, your leg even, Okay, it's going to be that much more difficult. And what I've seen at camp is they're not so much worried about you falling, as long as you obviously, even in falling, you keep the dog's safety in mind. Like maybe you sacrifice yourself in order to keep your dogs, in order to keep the dog safe. And if you do stuff like that, and obviously as long as it's not happening over and over, like you can't go to camp and like fall 7 times, obviously, but maybe you fell at camp, but as long as you were able to like quickly get up while obviously keeping the dog safe, like not twisting up the dog or something like that, stuff like that, as long as you were able to get up quickly and like complete that drive or whatever, they're fairly happy about it, because they understand that in your decoying career you're going to fall no matter who you are. You can be the best decoy in the world, you'll still fall someday. Maybe not because the dog took you down, but for whatever reason, right? And you don't want a situation to arise where you're an amazing decoy if you're on your feet, but if you go to ground and you can't get up and drive the dog anymore, and they don't want this to happen, right? So let's say you don't fall at camp, there'll still probably be like drills, or they'll still probably put you in situations where they'll put you on the ground and maybe staple a dog to your tricep or something like that, and you'll have to get up and drive the dog, right? So so practice all that, and practice all that in your suit pants.
Right.
That's like, to me, that's very important. uh, Muscle memory is like, I think for me, so what I've noticed over the years is stationary catches in PSA are fairly easy to teach. Like you can have a fairly new guy who has maybe just a couple of months of experience decoying. You can have them sort of not like stonewall your dog. They can stand in one place and just like with the flow, just catch your dog. It's not that difficult if you have a decent enough coordinated individual to teach. But what happens is, from there, sort of moving on to the decoy, then moving at the dog. Initially maybe walking, eventually running, and then catching the dog while moving at the dog. That's quite a progression from the stationary catch, right? uh, and what ends up happening is, as club decoys, we tend to catch dogs in stationary positions most times. So there's not a lot of times that we get to practice like at club, like at your average club day. There's not a lot of times where you get to practice running at dogs and catching them. Obviously when you're developing a dog and stuff like that, but most times you're not actually creating like a courage test kind of a situation. Most times, plus we tend to find ways to slow down the dogs, just like, especially here, because we tend to not always have the most experienced decoys to practice on, etc. So that, I think, will take a lot of do that. For me, muscle memory is a huge part of it, right? Like you tend to not have a lot of time to decide what leg goes where, when the dog's hitting you. It should just, most times it should all just happen. You can't like make it happen. Like, it should just fall in place most times. If you're making it happen, like some people, like, this is again, this is what I feel. I may be wrong about this, but like, if you're someone who's able to make it happen, you may be able to make it happen for 2 dogs, maybe 3 dogs. I think as you start getting tired, muscle memory is probably going to be the only thing that you can fall back on. And that's precisely the point of certification. They want to, they'll only ask you to catch dogs once you're tired, really. So, or at least, the important ones. So, yeah, that's one very, very big part of it. What else? Practice. To me, practice a lot of, I think, handler attacks. just because you're going to have like an extra distraction in your left hand,
Yeah.
and especially if it's like a can curtain or something like that, a lot of times it's going to be blocking the target, and you sort of have to be able to maneuver it in a way where the target opens up fairly, like you give the dog enough time to see the target and come in.
Yeah.
You don't want the dog to like staple the distraction onto your bicep,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's not good. I guess maybe for some people, throwing the bag for the PSA 1 courage test,
Yeah.
it's like it's especially because it's very innocuous, right? Like it's not something that we think about as difficult, because by itself it's not.
Mm.
But but you have to think about it. Like when you start running at the dog, you're tremendously concerned about let's say a really fast dog coming in at you really hard,
Mm.
and that's when you have to throw the bag.
Yeah.
Like I've seen for a lot of people, even at our club, I've
Mm.
seen like the weirdest things happen, right? Like when I know that like the normal things to happen are when the bag gets thrown like really high,
Mm.
and it's almost like it doesn't sort of cross the dog's field of vision, almost like
Mm.
it's just right going somewhere else, so it doesn't really bother the dog much. Obviously, throwing it at the dog, which yes, at trials at times, it can happen, mistakes can be made. Maybe sometimes you throw the bag correctly, but it hits something on the field and rolls onto your dog's path or something like that. It can happen, but typically it's not something that we want to happen, right? So there's that. But I've seen like the weirdest things that I've seen is Saina do this.
Yeah.
Like when he runs at the dog and like he gets ready to throw this, and he sort of throws it behind him, and that was new to me. Like that was
Yeah.
like the weirdest thing to me. But yeah, like that what actually happened to us at the cert was basically we had like a chair placed in front of us and a chair at about 45 degrees, and we had to run at the chair in front of us, and we had to throw the bag uh, in between the two chairs, right? Not like it takes like an aerial path over the chairs, because that sort of will not put the bag in the dog's field of vision. Like it won't really bother him, even if it's like in the peripheral vision, if at all. You don't really want it to hit the ground like really early, because at times then it can just stop
Yeah.
right there, or it can sort of hit something and roll into the dog's path. So they had us do this, and every time we did not do a correct throw, we had to keep running to the end of the field and back, and then we had to do the next throw, right? So practice this a lot. Like, I mean, it'd be a shame because see, what happens is it's the most innocuous things, right? Like it's throwing a bag. You think about it like this, and it sort of feels like, yeah, it's just throwing a bag. It's not. It's really not a big deal, But when you have to do it in connection to running at a dog really hard, and the dog running at you really hard, and you have to be able to catch him, and and the arm that throws the bag also turns into your presentation, basically. Once you have to do it in connection with that, a lot of times, because you want the presentation to not go wrong, you have to do it in time, etc., etc. Then you tend to sometimes screw up the bag throw, and it would be a shame if you're catching dogs wonderfully well, amazingly, right?
Yeah, and not be able to
and not be able to throw.
Everything depends on the courage test.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if I mean, your chances of certifying take a hit because you couldn't throw a bag correctly, I mean, it'd be a shame, right? So it's a small little thing, but you can practice it, right? And like for me, run like when you start the courage test, like for a lot of people, they run with with like, and then what ends up happening is when you decide to throw, that's when the arm goes back, like, because that swing has to happen, right? Like if your hand is here and you swing, the bag's usually going to go up in the air, right? So in order for you to be able to throw properly, your hand has to go back and then come forward, like do this, and then present, like try doing this, like run at the dog with the bag behind you.
Yeah.
Like run at the dog like this, so that when it's time to throw the bag, you can just,
Throw and
yeah.
present.
So it, like, because what ends up happening is when things are happening at such a like high speed,
Mm.
this and this, it's just like twice the amount of work that you've done. You're
Yeah.
going to take a substantially more, like you're going to take substantially more time
Mm.
for that bag throw to be complete and the arm to be presented.
Yeah.
Okay, like I've seen a club where people end up throwing the bag late and the arm's not completely presented, and the dog ends up
Biting the shoulder.
biting the shoulder or somewhere in your pectoral or something
Mm.
like that, because the arm's not opened up enough.
Mm.
So I guess practice those things. Josh had me practice those quite a lot at his club.
Mm.
uh, so yeah, uh, yeah, tricep bites, I think, something that, even again, like, I don't like, I'm not going to say that it's going to be like a very big deciding factor. I don't think so.
Mm.
uh, because you're not as likely to like jam the dog or something like that on a tricep.
Mm.
you know uh, but I think maybe just so much more because of that, it's probably the least practiced area of decoying.
Mm.
you know um,
Being able to drive in a tricep bite.
exactly, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's like, for me, that I think the toughest part was that.
Mm.
For me, the toughest part was um, being able to drive in a tricep, because
Mm.
especially dogs that like
Swirl
really
out.
want to get away from you,
Yeah.
and like don't want to stay like in the pocket, stuff like that. Like, I think, yeah, that's and even like this brings me to another thing. We have quite a lot of those kind of dogs. Like, even your dog is just like that even when you're driving, right, like a lot of people, I think there's a lot of emphasis on catching, right?
Mm.
And which is, I mean, it's not wrong, obviously, but you still have to be able to drive the dog well.
Mm.
And there are a lot of dogs out there that are really going to try and
Mm.
get away from you,
Yeah.
and your drives have to be really fast to keep them in position. And even more so, your transitions from the catch to the drive have to be really smooth and quick.
Yeah.
Basically, you catch and then you go into the drive really quickly, so that you're really able to drive the dog really well.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's really going to matter quite a lot. So I think, yeah, practice your drives. And something for me, I think, that I really want to do for myself. That obviously I wanted to do this even before I got certified, and now even more so. I mean, travel
Mm.
and
Catch other dogs. Catch
and
different
dogs.
dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, catch dogs that you don't know, like work dogs that you don't know. Uh, the more you do, I think the better decoy you'll get. Not just in terms of sharpening your technique, yes, that too, but also in your mind, like, like just you being able to say to yourself that you are a decent enough decoy.
Mm.
uh, because that question about, what if, like right now, maybe you're catching a dog from your own club and you're doing really well, and stuff like that, and then maybe you think about, what if this was KP, or
Mm.
something like that. Would I be able to catch him? Would I, like, it was like a lot of that for me when I went to Dallas,
Mm.
when I was given the opportunity to catch dog at Koi's club, Josh's club. uh, Once I, like, when I caught them, and it was not a disaster, like,
Mm.
like, like, it was not like they just kept taking me out or anything like that.
Mm.
you know once that happened, I think it did a lot for my
Morale boost.
yeah, exactly. Like it did a lot for my mindset. Like it almost sort of made me feel like I belong. Like it's not like I'm some guy chasing this weird dream where it's just not possible.
It's
It
an
sort of
unrealistic goal.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It made me feel like, okay, you're not thinking about something that's unachievable or anything like that. So yeah, I mean that is what catching a lot of dogs that you don't know and stuff like that, I think will give you. I think it's a pretty big mistake when we are like let's say I'm catching your dog and I'm just catching your dog,
Yeah.
and I'm calling that practice
Yeah.
for as a trial decoy for a big organization like PSA. That's hardly enough.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, like we have 10-11 dogs at our club and I catch most of them, and I still understand that that's not enough.
Yeah.
That's not enough. Like I really want to figure out ways to to get like get to a place where I can decoy a lot more other dogs and stuff like that that I don't know, and stuff like that. So do all that, and it should be fine. And I think more so, like there are a lot of decoys in the US that I know of who've been to a camp and not certified, and who've gone to another camp after that, and they've prepared themselves maybe much
And
much
gone to
better
another
than
camp.
before. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then they've certified and they're awesome decoys. And not that they were not awesome decoys even before that, but for whatever reason they could not make it in the first try, and that's fine. That doesn't say anything. The end product is that matters. Like what I want to say is I'm sure there are decoys even right now in India, maybe from our club, maybe from other clubs, whatever, that will go into the cert that may or may not certify. If you don't, I mean, if you do, amazing. We really need to remember, that's sort of our entry into, like, that doesn't put me, like, for example, I certified recently. It doesn't put me on a pedestal. It just puts me in a place of more responsibility. It's sort of just a beginning of a really long journey. It's nothing else. And if you don't certify, I think just let it just solidify that resolve to do it again, the next time we have camp, and do it in a more prepared manner, and you'll get it the next time. It's really not that, like, don't let it, bog you down in any way, So that's very important. Awesome. So I hope you really liked this. We are just about, I guess, about 25 days away from the certification camp. If any of you would like to, if you have questions or if you just want to discuss certain things, no way am I claiming to be an authority on any of this. I am just someone who got an opportunity maybe a few months before you guys. That's all it was. But that opportunity came with a certain amount of experience that I had during the camp, and based on that, I can, whatever help that I can be of, I'll be very happy to to pass it on. The main intention being that I want a lot of decoys in India because I'm also a competitor, and I really want to see that the sport sort of becomes self-sufficient within the country, right? So I'll be happy to discuss whatever you people come up with. Awesome. Let me know. You can get in touch on Titanium K9s on Instagram or on Facebook. Thank you. Until next time.